I don't think Ben Wikler needs an introduction to you, but I will say, as a way of introduction, the reason that we really, really, really wanted to get Ben for this was because I think more than anybody else in the country, he has managed to be successful in a critical state, in a really tough state, statewide, combining both party power and grassroots organizing in a way that is just groundbreaking. And he's an inspiration to us. And that's why we wanted him here. It's a statewide effort. And we want to learn everything that we can from him. Ben, welcome. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for that introduction. And thank you to Patty. Thank you to all the leaders here at the California Grassroots Alliance and everyone, all 177 people on this Zoom on this mid-April Wednesday night. This gives me such energy and enthusiasm and hope to see everybody on this Zoom at this moment. And I'm really honored to join you as you formally launch this campaign that can save democracy. Your focus on a strategy that could move mountains is just so exciting and inspiring. So let me start by saying a huge thank you. Second thing I'll say is that I love the Wisconsin-California connection on this call. I have known Anat Shenker-Osorio since I was about 8 years old when she was in my sister's elementary school theater group. So I was the bratty little brother running around, and then she went off and moved to California and studied messaging and communication, and is working with folks across the country. And I worked in progressive politics around the country and a bit around the world, and then moved back home to Wisconsin in 2018, in a moment when, just to move us back in time, it felt like Wisconsin might be lost. And Wisconsin was the tipping point state in the Electoral College that put Trump over the top. So I want to bring you back to where things were in Wisconsin in that moment, just to help share a sense of how dire things can get before they get better, when people unite and decide that they need to be the heroes that they're waiting for and join this fight in exactly the way that everyone here is doing tonight. So Wisconsin in 2018 had been the closest state in the country into the 2004 presidential election, second closest state in 2000. It zigzagged between Barack Obama landslides and Scott Walker landslides, two full zigzags, or I guess two and a half. We had Obama 08, Scott Walker 2010. Scott Walker won his recall in 2012, right before Obama won again in 2012, and then Walker won again in 2014. And in that time, he used his power. The MAGA movement, at that point, it was called the Tea Party movement, used its power to do exactly the things that you saw in the video just now. We have lived this reality in Wisconsin. They started by smashing unions, the counterweight to the power of billionaire mega donors in Wisconsin. We've had the biggest decline in union density of any state in the country in Wisconsin. Over the course of this century, no state has lost more union members, which is especially painful in a state that was the birth of public sector unions and one of the forerunners of labor rights in our nation. In Wisconsin, Republicans rigged the right to vote. They created one of the most restrictive voter ID laws. They went in detail through every way that Democrats turned out voters and made it impossible, essentially illegal, to do door-to-door voter registration, made Wisconsin the second hardest state to vote, second hardest state to register to vote in the country, the fourth hardest state to cast a ballot in the country. They instituted the most aggressive partisan gerrymander of either party, locking in Republican near supermajorities and on the road to supermajorities in both chambers of the legislature, even in years where Democrats won a majority of the votes statewide. They changed our campaign finance laws, which now I am happy to share the state party has no limits on donations, so you can give as much as you want, but I'm sorry to share. They did this at a time when they locked out money from unions and from grassroots organizations, made it so individuals could give unlimited amounts, and then the state parties could donate unlimited amounts to the candidates. And Scott Walker's friend Reince Priebus, who became nationally famous a few years later, he would take $1 million checks from the biggest Republican donors in the country and then basically hand them over to Scott Walker. And Republicans started running the table in our state. In 2018, we had a 5-2 right-wing mega majority on our state Supreme Court. We had near supermajorities in both chambers of our state legislature. We had Tammy Baldwin, wonderful champion, and then Ron Johnson. We still have that situation. We had a Republican governor, Republican attorney general. We had nearly a total Republican lock. And the policies that they put in place accelerated mass incarceration even while it was going down in other states, gutted public education even while other states were making investments in. They banned the use of the term climate change from our Department of Natural Resources in topic after topic after topic. They were moving Wisconsin back to the 19th century. And in that moment, Democrats had a kind of a choice. People of all parties who believed in democracy could either accept their fate, the inevitable, that Wisconsin would go the way of Iowa and Ohio and Indiana, states that used to be blue or purple but had essentially been rigged by the right. Or they could unite, or they could stop blaming each other for defeat and find ways to come together and rediscover their common power and purpose and focus on rescuing democracy in the state that tipped the Electoral College for the entire country. And in a moment when despair would have been a far easier option, they refused to give up and they started to organize. So I'll take you back to 2018. In that year, in the year of the blue wave, we won every statewide election that year, but we won the governor's race by 1.1 percentage points, which we call that a Wisconsin landslide because it's more than 1 point. But that was an incredibly close election. I remember being at the victory party on election night for the governor, and one of the top activists in the state left early to just go home and go to sleep because she'd concluded we were going to lose and no one would ever want to support Wisconsin Democrats again at that point. And then they started counting the absentee ballots in Milwaukee, and we went over the top. It was a preview of the 2020 red shift and the red mirage and then the blue shift. But it was that close. In 2020, we used that momentum to power us through a state Supreme Court election when the pandemic hit, and we were able to win by 11 percentage points in this extraordinary landslide when Republicans thought the COVID pandemic would suppress Democratic votes, and Democrats and so many people were so outraged by their gall that they turned out. Then that fall, we won our presidential election here by 0.6 of a percentage point. Republicans tried to overturn it. It came within one vote on our state Supreme Court. If we hadn't won the state Supreme Court race that spring, the election would have been overturned. Then Republicans decided the problem was they hadn't rigged our system enough. What do you call a failed coup? Practice. So coming out of 2020, they started introducing bills to scrap our bipartisan elections commission. They got the right-wing Supreme Court to ban absentee ballot drop boxes in our state. It's illegal in Wisconsin to return even your own relatives' absentee ballot. I spoke to a father in tears on election day in 2022, holding his daughter's absentee ballot. She was at a 24-hour nursing shift across the state, and he was not allowed to turn it in. She was disenfranchised by that court ruling. They ran massive sham investigations into the 2020 election and used that as a pretext to threaten to jail the mayors of our 5 biggest cities if they wouldn't knuckle under. They issued subpoenas galore to people all over the state. They intimidated, flooded with death threats, local elections administrator, clerks. They removed every Republican county canvasser board member who had certified the legitimate election results, so that we're one county clerk away from having a county that refuses to certify a legitimate election in this moment. They did everything they could. And we organized harder. We organized in every corner of the state. In 2016 to 2020 and 2018 to 2022, we increased the number of votes in every single county in Wisconsin for Democrats. And in 2022, when history says we should have lost the governor's race, we should have lost the supermajority, our organizing beat their cheating. That's what Jason's been saying in the chat. In Wisconsin, the president's party always loses the governor's race. No Democrat had won a governor's election with a Democratic president in the White House since 1962, when John F. Kennedy's approval rating was 70% after the Cuban Missile Crisis. It was basically written in stone. Democrats would lose in 2022. But the Republican MAGA candidate handpicked by Donald Trump after a visit to Mar-a-Lago, who ran on a platform that he supported the total abortion ban in Wisconsin and said a few weeks out from the election that once he was elected, no Republican would ever lose in the state of Wisconsin, are organizing to lift up Tony Evers, mild-mannered, decent, humane human being, to defeat this MAGA maniac. It led to a 3.4 percentage point true Wisconsin landslide in the governor's race. And in the state legislature, after the Republican Supreme Court overrode the governor's veto by itself and chose the Republicans' mega gerrymandered maps, even worse than the ones before, we held off a Republican supermajority that could have overturned the governor's veto by 0.01% of the votes cast in the state. It was 2,499 votes. And because of that, If you tried to pass a bill to restrict democracy in Wisconsin, the governor could veto it, and the veto could not be overridden, and democracy was safe. After that, we had a Supreme Court race. The advisor to the Republican fake elector strategy in Wisconsin ran for Supreme Court, backed by the whole Trump machine. A bigger independent expenditure in the race for Supreme Court in Wisconsin in 2023 than the total amount spent by both sides in any previous judicial election in the country. We made that election about abortion and democracy, about our fundamental freedoms, the things that should be at the heart of the birthright of every American and everyone who's come to America. And we won that election by 11 percentage points. And that means that in this moment, if we win the presidential election here, it will stay won because we have focused at each step on the one thing we needed to do to save democracy in a place that it mattered most. And I tell this story both because I'm so proud of what everyone in Wisconsin's done and grateful for all the help from people all across the country who are joining us tonight, but also to tell this story because now, in this moment, you are the star of this story. You're the hero that we need because California uniquely has the power to stop the MAGA maniacs, the Mike Johnsons of the world, from controlling the US House of Representatives. And the damage that they can inflict on our democracy and our freedoms if they hold on to the House in this election is unimaginable. But the progress that's possible if we're able to reverse control of the House in this moment is so vast. Now, as a Wisconsin Democrat, I usually come to California for fundraising and finding out-of-state volunteers. But in this moment, California, your own democracy can save democracy for this entire country. Your votes, your volunteering, your donations to support these candidates for Congress, they can turn the tide in this House battle that is central to the question of whether the American experiment will survive. We have lessons that we can share from Wisconsin. The first is to zero in on the things that make all the difference in the world. If anyone on this call has ever donated an Act Blue, you probably have 100 emails in your inbox every single day from different candidates asking you for money, text messages, but zeroing in on the handful of races where you decide to make your stand and make sure that you actually win and flip the House majority can make all the difference. So focus. Secondly, make sure that the people doing the work are the hero of the story. We love our candidates. We love our elected officials. They're heroes. They're so brave to put their names on the ballot, do the work. It is hard work when you're serving in public office, but your activists, your supporters, your volunteers, they are actually the protagonists in this narrative. And the video did that exactly. And everyone on this call, you are here because you know that your work and your effort can make the difference. Hold on to that light and keep spreading it. The third thing is to give people specific things to do. In Wisconsin, I will say, you can donate to us. You can join our remote organizing team, do phone banking. You can join our voter protection team. I know that you're doing exactly the same thing, giving people the concrete steps and actions they can take. There's no better cure for political anxiety than taking action. It is a wonder drug, and it is something that has an inexhaustible supply. It's just your time and your will and your focus and your energy and your willingness to let the kids watch TV when you're doing your phone banking. But that's totally fine. They will thank you for it later when they grow up in a democracy. It makes all the difference. And the last thing I want to share is that it's critical at every step to find the incremental wins step by step and make sure people see the impact of what they're doing. Reflect back to them that they're actually making a difference with their work. When you reach a fundraising deadline or a goal and you surpass it, celebrate that. When you have a goal for the number of doors you want to knock or phone calls you want to make, reflect back to people that they came together and they did it. And then on election night, you can't control whether you win or lose, but you can know that you did everything in your power. And every win that you do rack up becomes a collective victory that creates the energy for the next fight. Wisconsin has a ridiculous number of elections. We have 6 elections every 2 years, at least, when there's no special election. Every spring, we have a spring primary, a spring general. Every other fall, we have a primary and a general. And it is exhausting. And probably some people on this call sometimes have felt exhausted in their political work in this moment of constant crisis of one election after another. That's the most important election of our lifetime. So you have to celebrate and reflect on the fact that by doing this work, you're actually building the kind of democracy that everyone deserves to live in. Democracy is a life sport. It is like pickleball. And it is something that at every step you can be involved, whether you're dinking or way back away from the net. My wife plays pickleball. I have picked up about 2 words about it. It is something that all of us can do on a year-round basis, but to make it possible to sustain the energy, you will have to find the joy, as well as the abject terror of what can happen if we lose the joy of participation in itself. Because participating in doing this work, deciding that all of us can be the protagonist, that is how we find the energy to sustain ourselves through fight after fight after fight. That through the incremental power of winning these elections and participating in these elections can allow us to create the kind of world that everyone deserves to grow up in. So, with all that, I want to thank everyone so, so much for your work and for your dedication and for what you're going to do. Wisconsin doesn't have enough swing House seats to save the US House, but you do. So, we are counting on you. Wisconsin is counting on you in the California Grassroots Alliance to do this hard work, save the House, and make sure that we are living through a rebirth of American democracy. Thank you all so, so much. Go fight, win.